Hi, my name is Yujin Tang, and I was a former software engineer at Amazon, and I've built my own profitable company. And I've given this talk on how to build products quite a few times on Clubhouse and on different online communities. And I wrote an ebook about this titled Discover, Design, Deliver, and you'll see why in a moment. And the full audiobook for that will be coming out, but this is kind of the intro to that, is just the introduction to building products. So what does the system for building products look like? And I'm just talking about best practices here. I'm talking about best practices for like scaling a product, like building a product that you think can legitimately have like a million users. So the system looks like this: discover, design, deliver, and throughout the entire time, document, document, document. You always want to document what you're doing and how it's being done and why you're doing it that way. So discover is when you go and you kind of find out what you're building. Design is when you design what you're building. And deliver is when you actually create the product. And this is, I'm talking about, this is like tech stuff, like software almost. Like, I mean, hardware is included in this as well, but this isn't like, like I'm going to start an e-commerce business. This is like if you're building like an actual like kind of like product for people to sell, or that you're going to sell. So why do we want to follow these practices? Why is this structure? Why is discover, design, deliver the best structure? So one, it provides an organized structure for you to work around, for you to kind of organize your work in like specific manners. Like, okay, this work should be done like, in this order. And then like next time we're going to do it, in the same order. And you have like a system that keeps everything in place. It makes it so there's less upfront work. If you have everything designed before you actually go in and like code stuff or deliver it, then you kind of you have if you got everything planned out, it's less upfront work, and then it's less maintenance work too, because once again, you have everything planned out. You kind of see everything on the screen, kind of. You can see everything like in like a plan like manner. So you kind of know how things connect. So there's less maintenance work. There's less surprises. And then there's easier transitions, and this is mainly the documentation portion. You have to document really well so that we can have easier transitions. So you can pass this on to the next person, and they'll be able to like pick it up pretty simply. So let's talk about discover. What's involved in the discover portion? Gather your requirements. This is the first part. Like literally go out and like find out what is it that you are building. What do you need to build? Kind of like thinking about like your features and like what you want your software to do. And then what's the existing software? If your hardware is slightly different, but this talk is mostly focused on building software. So what is the existing software? So there's tons of things you can go out and look for in terms of existing software. You can look for like something that does something very similar to what you're doing. Something that kind of solves like a similar problem. And then you want to understand the existing tech progression, which is kind of where you're just like, okay, like let me figure out what tech I'm going to use, what tech stack I'm going to use, and like why, and then what am I going to do with it, and stuff like that. So you want to understand the existing tech progression in your discover portion. And this also, like, if you're, this is touches on like if you are doing like the next iteration, right? So when you're first building your software, maybe the tech progression is kind of like rough, but when you're iterating on a product, maybe it's like the third or fourth iteration, then you have to kind of understand like why do we choose the technology that we went with, and how are we going to move forward with that in the future. And then during the discover section, one thing you want to, I put this as the question at the bottom of all of them, but what should you document? And the answer is literally like document everything. Document your decisions and why you make them. And so in design, basically what you want to start with, you want to create a map, which you can go from where your current project is and go to your end goal. So this would be like, if you're first starting out building a product, your current project's at 0, it's at nothing. So you don't have to worry about this. You just have to know what your end goal is for that iteration. And there's a bunch of different things to design here. It's not just like your end goal for the one iteration, but also your end goal for like your product as a whole, right? So if you see your product as something that's like, it's going to have like 300 features, you're gonna want to break that down into iterations and have each end goal maybe be like 1 or 2 features. Then you want to design the data flows, and this is super, super important. Like, I cannot stress this enough. You want good data flows. Make sure that the data flows through your app. Make sure you know the way the data flows through your app, your software, whatever, and make sure that it flows well, and make sure that, there's a lot of privacy laws now, so make sure it all like follows the privacy laws and stuff. Make sure things are easily accessed. And data flows are mostly based around things like what you think it'll look like for the user to use your product, and stuff like that, and like how is the data going to be accessed and so on. And then you want to design your APIs as you need. And this is, so API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it basically gives you, like, API contracts give you this thing where you just like send some data to this, and then it black boxes the function and it sends you some data back. And what do you need to document in your design process? Once again, just like in Discover, you pretty much want to document everything. Document all of your decisions and why you made them, and obviously document your map and your data flows and your APIs. So pretty much everything. The answer to this is almost always going to be everything. So deliver. This is the part where we're actually going to build the product out, right? So you want to define your interfaces. So what are interfaces? Interfaces are essentially these like maps, or these like blueprints, these architectures, this blueprint kind of. Blueprint's a good relation. Like a blueprint that you put your application, that you put your function to, right? And you really want to have your interfaces defined so you kind of know what the abstractions of your software will look like. And then you want to think, what are your functions in English? And like kind of figure out like what each function does, what it does to the data, what data it needs, what does it serve? What is the purpose that function serves, in terms of like, how does it how does it contribute to the feature that you're building, right? So you want to know what everything does in English. You want to know what it does with the data, and also this helps like when you're explaining what your functions do to like someone else, to have like an English explanation instead of being like, this line does this. I mean, actually, you can definitely break things down to this line does this line does this, and this line does that, almost maybe not line by line, but in a very similar manner. And then finally, you want to get to the part where you actually code it. And the reason why I have like defined interfaces and defining your functions in English before you code it is because if you have these like figured out, like, like what kind of interfaces go there and then what each function does in like a basic level, then your coding is going to be much easier because you don't have to like think as you code. You just kind of like, you're like, oh yeah, okay, this function is supposed to do this. So how do I get that done with code? Like, oh, look, I described it in English already, so I kind of know what it's supposed to do. And once again, what should you document? The answer is everything. Yeah, document everything. Just like Discover and Design and Deliver, you want to document everything. You want to document your interfaces, what your functions are. You want to comment your code, and it's just, you want to document everything. So in review, it's really important that we discover correctly, right? If you do your discovery part, if you do your gather requirements and you get it wrong, and I've seen this happen to so many people. Like one of my friends had to go through like years of having his application built and rebuilt because of a communication problem, of a not having like a clear communication of what he wanted to build, and that also he had outsourced it to a dev team which didn't have perfect English. And I mean, this isn't just like a language problem too, like people who are native English speakers have these communication problems too. So it's really important that you do discovery correctly, and then repeatedly check your design against your requirements. Like every time, every single new design feature you add, check how it matches up against the requirements that you have. And finally, delivery is the easiest part. Like, like figuring out what interfaces do and figuring out what the functions do. Maybe it's time consuming. It's time consuming for sure to be coding, but it's easy to do because once you know what you're supposed to be doing, all you got to do is translate that from English into code. So if I were you, I would really focus on like the design portion, and to make sure you get that right, make sure you get the discovery portion right, and then delivery will come by itself because it kind of comes as like a, if you do everything else correctly, this is easiest to do. And then once again, document. You want to document everything. Literally everything that you think can be documented, document it. Some things that you think may not need to be documented, document that. Like, for example, maybe you're like, we're going to pick, Google Firebase authentication over AWS Cognito for your login. And then you got to be like, okay, well, why do we do that? And you can document that, Is it ease of use? Is it that we don't need the functionality of AWS Cognito? Is it that we need the functionality of Google Auth? Like, what is it? So, yeah. Once again, I hope this has been helpful to you guys. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. And yeah, thanks for being a fan. Peace out.